It's 2025, the year to thrive, and this is episode 6. So back in 2011, I wrote a blog post on my website, and it was entitled something like 11 Tips for 2011. And when I ran into this, just kind of perusing over some old blog posts, I wondered, there were 11 tips for 14 years ago. How are we doing on those? Are they things that are no longer relevant? Are they things that we should still work on? How are we actually doing with those 11 tips? So I thought I'd look at where I was at least 14 years ago when offering tips to agents for how to thrive in 2011, which, by the way, doesn't rhyme as well as how to thrive in 2025. The first one was Rightside real estate. We live in a world of information overload, where the real estate professional is no longer in charge of the flow of that information. Well, great agents have a backup plan on the other side of their brain. Now, one of the greatest books I have ever read of any kind was a book called A Whole New Mind by Daniel Pink. And it's the subtitle that sets the tone for the nature of the book. Why Right-Brainers Will Rule the Future. And in that book, he talks about some right side aptitudes, at least that's what he calls them, that are really relevant for people if they want to thrive in the future. Those are design, story, symphony, empathy, play, and meaning. But the thing that keeps coming up to me about Daniel Pink's book, whenever I get overly invested in all the information and the data and how we can just get anything we want at the snap of a finger, is this. When facts become so widely available and instantly accessible, each one becomes less valuable. What begins to matter more is the ability to place these facts into context and deliver them with emotional impact. Go to Google and look up the words price my house and see how many tens of thousands, if not millions, of results there are. Yet the real pricing of a house, yeah, there's science to it, but there's a whole lot of art to it. We all have access to the same comps. We all have access to the same information. It's what we do with it. It's how we put that house's market value into the context of its surroundings that separate the great agents from the not so great agents. Number 2, counseling skills. As sellers and buyers are faced with increasing amount of options, just more and more and more all the time, it becomes clear that one of the best tools in an agent's toolkit is the ability to interview, listen, and counsel. 3, negotiating principles. Holy Toledo, today's agent understands the value of becoming a proficient negotiator. There are a whole lot of negotiating principles that are essential to understand and a whole lot of tools at the heart of every great real estate negotiation professional, for lack of a better word, I suppose. So you can take classes. There are all kinds of great negotiating classes out there. CRS has like 4 or 5 of them. Reback and Rebuy have them. The Women's Council has a negotiating class. You can read books. You can do online sessions. You can do master classes in negotiation. Just as a passing note, my 3 favorite books of all time when it comes to negotiation are, in this order, number 1, Getting Past No by William Ury. Number 2, Never Split the Difference by FBI hostage negotiator Chris Voss. And number 3, Getting to Yes by Roger Fisher, William Ury, Bruce Patton. Number 4, The One Buttock Presentation. This one could take a long time to explain, but the name comes from a video by Benjamin Zander, who was conductor of the Boston Symphony Orchestra for ages. And he used to have his students do these recitals, and it wasn't like it was when you were a kid where you came up and you played the piano and everybody clapped and everybody said you were just awesome, even if you sucked. In Benjamin Zander's recital, there might be 1,000 people in the room, and he stood right there next to you. And if you made a mistake, he pointed it out. and he tried to correct it. And if you didn't make a mistake and you just didn't sound right, he pointed that out. And that's where the One Buttock thing came up. This pianist was playing and he was fabulous. He knew every note, he knew everything. And Benjamin Zander said, the trouble with you is that you're a 2-buttock player and you need to be a 1-buttock player. Now, what he meant was, it's one thing to sit squarely in your little piano bench and play the notes and play them just right. It's another thing to be into the music and really let it flow out of you. And in a cookie-cutter world of way over 1 million realtors, there is a way to deliver a knowledgeable, customized, focused, incredibly effective listing presentation or buyer presentation every single time. Number 5, obtaining buyer loyalty. Do you ever wonder why sellers find it easier to sign the dotted line, let you into their world, and show loyalty while buyers seem so fickle? Well, the answer is simple. If we treated our buyers more like how we treat our sellers, we might receive the same level of trust and loyalty. Now, because of the antitrust suits, we now live in a world where the rules to engage with buyers have changed. And now, in most states across this country, you better be prepared to show value to a buyer if you want to be the agent of choice and get paid. 6, using tech tools wisely. 14 years. More has happened in the last 14 years in the technology world than from 2011 back to 0. There's a multitude of technology tools pulling at your time, pulling at your wallet. So which ones are worth it? Which ones aren't? I don't know that this challenge will ever end because we're constantly evolving as far as the tools we use. But the question for me when it comes to technology is not what tool should I get? How does it work? I ask myself, why do I need it in my business? I have a really strong feeling about technology that if I'm going to spend the money, and if I'm going to spend the time learning something, and if I'm going to spend the energy investing in a particular technology, it needs to do 2 things. It needs to make me more efficient and more effective. And if it doesn't do those 2 things, I don't care how cool it is. It doesn't pass the test of, well, why do I need this in my business? Number 7, handling objections with love. For every objection out there, you've been taught a clever quip that just puts that buyer or seller in their place. Unfortunately, most of these quips are bullyish or just plain mean. Well, what do you charge? Well, I charge this. Well, you know, there's another agent who said he'd do it for a lot less. Well, some people know what they're worth. You know what? Maybe it's time for a more human approach. William Urey's book, Getting Past No, will really help in this issue. Number 8, let's get hip to the hottest things. Now, by the way, I don't even think anyone said hip back in 2011. Maybe that's before then. But as the real estate business continues to change, agents must not only know the hottest topics and trends, but they also need to become educated in them as well. Because again, I have to know where to spend my energy, my time, and my money. So I have to investigate before I just waste either of those 3. Number 9, having the right tools right now. We have a multitude of tools. The National Association of Realtors has made a plethora of tools that have fantastic information, wonderful resources that are available to agents at the click of a mouse. So figure out what the best ones are and the most relevant ones are for your business, and for crying out loud, use them. Your company has tools, your local association, your MLS. There are tools to make your life easier everywhere. Number 10, understand generational buying. You know, the average realtor is somewhere around 55 years old, and the average first-time home buyer is somewhere around 32. That's quite a big gap, but it's not the only one of significance. You have to understand the characteristics of home buyers' generations if you want to be a more effective real estate professional. You're going to treat a brand new first-time buying Gen Z a lot different than you're going to treat that elderly person who is either selling their last house because they can no longer live independently, or they're downsizing from a great big house into a more convenient type of lifestyle. The SRES class, by the way, from the National Association of Realtors is a great class to learn more about generational buying. And last but not least, making social media work. So you have 2,582 Facebook friends. You just posted the cutest puppy pictures ever posted by anyone, or you were the king or queen of Farmville. 14 years ago, Farmville. I'm not sure that's still a thing, is it? Well, even if it was, you have 2,582 Facebook friends. Why aren't they getting you business? Perhaps you need a focus and you need a plan. And maybe you need to investigate how the algorithms on most social media sites, especially Facebook, have evolved, and how interest and attention are the things that are drawing people to you have changed. How I get myself out in front of you is different than it was 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 8 years ago. So number 6, done. We handled it. We got it. I think some of those 11 things are still pretty relevant for us. Feel free to like, subscribe. Feel free to comment. I mean, unless you're going to get nasty, then save it for somebody else that you really don't like, because you all like me. I'm pretty easy to like. So don't be afraid to comment, and especially don't be afraid to suggest other topics. Happy to respond to anything that you might want to know about. I appreciate the time you are spending with me to watch this video. Thank you.